Thank you everyone for joining us here today with the first Technovation live class. My name is Kiki. I work for Technovation as a program coordinator. We also have here Karen, who's our curriculum developer, Emily, an awesome intern of ours, and 3 really cool alumni that you'll meet soon. So the first step of the journey can be the hardest. Today, we are here to support you and one another as we work on identifying the right problem for you and your team. This can be the hardest part, and we know it's where teams spend a lot of time or sometimes even want to give up. And that's why today we're here to provide you tips to support you, and hopefully by the end of this session, you'll be closer to figuring out the right problem. All right, so we are going to go through some alumna tips on finding the right problem to solve. The first alumna up is Emerald. Are you here today, Emerald?
Yes, I'm here. Good afternoon.
Okay, and we turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emerald Akalmere, and I'm an alumni from Nigeria. Hello. How you not day? So normally in Nigeria, when we're greeting our friends, we ask our friends how we are, and we start with how you not day. So I joined Technovation in 2018, and I have been a club ambassador for 2 years, for 2022 and 2023. And it's really an honor to work with the Technovation team. So I'll be discussing with you guys about some ideation process. Now, sorry for some reason. Okay, yeah. So talking about identifying the problem and how can we identify the problem. Technovation is all about looking for problems in your community that can be solved using technology. Now, we realize that most problems in our community can be solved using technology. So how do you go about finding the problem, and why is critical thinking so important to your ideation process? Well, critical thinking is important because it talks about us analyzing things in our environment, in our surroundings. That's the whole process of critical thinking. Now, critical thinking is the ability to collect and analyze information from very different perspectives. That means you're not just looking at your own perspective. You're not just looking from your own side. You're looking from the perspective of different people. And when you're coming to a solution with critical thinking, you're coming to an optimum solution that is unbiased. So this solution will help you, it will help the next person in your street, it will help the next person in a different state. Now, being able to think critically rather is important in every industry, and it's important all over the world, because with thinking critically, it helps us to be able to know what ideas are what's going for and are what's picking up. Now, critical thinking is not based on subjects, but it's actually based on information, collecting of data, and the rest. So now, how can we develop our critical thinking skills? Now, mind you that critical thinking skills improves our problem-solving skills. You can do that by identifying the problem. Ask yourself, why is this happening? What is happening? Why is this a problem? What assumptions am I making? By asking yourself this question, you are able to look at the problem from different perspectives. At first glance, you might ask yourself, how can I solve this problem? Then you can find out from different people using research about their own point of view of the problem. You might generally have an idea of a problem, but in order to come up with the best solution to your problem, you need to dig deeper. Now, this is why research is important. Collect information relating to the problem, including data, statistics, your team input, and so much more. Talk to people, talk to your parents, your peers, people who are facing this problem. Ask them why this is a problem and why they want to solve the problem. When you've gathered enough information, you'll be able to clearly identify how that problem can be solved. The next point is point number 3. Determine your data relevance, or identify the best questions in order for you to ask. So you need to ask questions. Ask why things are that way. Ask why they want that solution. Why is that particular way of handling the situation important to them? Why is this particular solution important to them as the people? Why is it important to certain kind of people that things has to be solved in this particular way? This will help you to learn about people's perspective. Note that Technovation is all about you solving problems in your community, but it's also about you building your entrepreneurial skills. Now, entrepreneurs fix problems in their community. They don't just start a business. So it's important for you to get people's perspective on matters. Now, identify the best solution by going through what you have learned. So this means data relevance. Go through what you have gathered throughout your research and you asking questions. Why is this data important? Why is it? Well, senior and I. Sorry, please. Thank you. So when you've gathered the information, you'll be able to go through and ask yourself, how reliable is this information? How significant is this information? Is this information outdated? Is it only for a particular group of people? Are there additional variables that I have not considered? Am I making assumptions about this information? One thing we have to know is that our solutions need to be unbiased. So now, are there viewpoints that you have missed? Have I evaluated information from every perspective without to be able to identify the best solution? Now, when you have identified your solution, you have finally come to a conclusion. And this is the best part of it. Because once you identify the best conclusion, you can now draw connections between the causes and the effects. So use the facts you've gathered to evaluate the most objective conclusion, the conclusion that will give rise to your solution that will help to mitigate the problem in your society and that will help you to become that digital entrepreneur that Technovation is all about. Now, present your solution. Communication is a very crucial key for critical thinkers and problem solvers like all of us here. Now, it is not enough for you to think for yourself. You have to share your conclusion with your team members. If there are multiple solutions, do well to present those solutions to your team members. And if you guys are going to go with a particular solution, try and test it out and see how it works before you then go over to implementing another decision. After that, we come to the seventh step. Analyze your decision. Now, every thinking process yields a result. Every problem-solving process yields a result. So it's very effective that you ask yourself questions whether this solution is effective or it's not. Now, how did you intend to solve the problem initially? What lessons have you learned from this experience? And what can you use to improve your next experience? It's very important for you to analyze your decision because when you want to actually overcome a problem or solve a problem in your community, come across many solutions. And by viewing solutions point by point, analyzing your decision while presenting your decision to your team members, it will go a long way in you guys having that beautiful idea and helping your ideation journey to be smooth while you go through the steps. And finally, team love. Remember that even though everyone has a role to play, we can all help each other out. The ideation journey is a journey for everyone on the Technovation team to experience. It is a beautiful journey as you go about finding ways to solve problems in the community you care about and love about. Through this ideation journey, build that connection with members of your team, and you will enjoy going through the critical thinking process together while learning from each other and having fun. The best part is to have fun in each of your Technovation milestones. I wish you guys all a successful season this year. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. So, hi, I'm Mehak. I'm a law student pursuing law from India right now. And I was a Technovation alumni in 2017. And we won the health category. We made the app a Precare. The logo I've also added in the next slide of mine. Uh, And I'm sure you're all sort of well versed with respect to what technovation, with respect to what ideation is to some extent, right? As Emerald just took you very in detail about the critical thinking process and how one goes about it. So, in my 5 minutes, I'm really not going to focus a lot on the textbook definition of what ideation is. What I'm really going to take you through is some things which really stayed with me after me and my team went through the entire process of ideation, and some quick tips which will really make your journey a lot more smoother in a way. Uh, so, while coming up with ideas individually, it might be a little more easier. But as soon as you have to come up with ideas in a group, the dynamic of the game completely changes. Why this happens is something I would like to introduce with a short activity. The next slide, please. Yeah. So, is there, and I would really like if everyone could be a little responsive over the chat box. So, is there anyone who doesn't know who Greta Thunberg is here? If you don't know, just tell me in the chat box or something. Okay. So let's not. Okay. So for example, if I divide everyone into two groups, the group A being people who like Greta and group being people who don't like Greta. Okay. And you've sort of made this is an informed decision which everyone has made. Now, if I pick someone up from group A and I ask them, why do they like Greta? The answer they give me is because in a nutshell, it's going to be they like Greta because of some positive associations or some positive emotions they have attached to Greta, right? So when they're talking about why they like Greta, they're very emotional about why they like Greta. But vis-a-vis, if I ask someone from group B to convince someone from group A as to why Greta is really not nice and why did they, choose to not like Greta, they'll probably be very passionate in the conversation in order to make you understand as to why Greta really isn't right. So as soon as a group get involved, what gets involved is emotions and passion. Now with emotions and passion, what a problem which comes in a group dynamic is there is a sort of power dynamic which gets formed. What really happens is that everyone in the group sort of starts feeling a sense of superiority, and that superiority might lead to the next slide, please. The next to next, in fact. So that's emotion, passion, and how that leads to power dynamic. The next slide. Okay, yeah. So in order to avoid the power dynamic situation wherein everyone's a little hostile towards the other people, because obviously everyone is emotional about different things or is passionate about different things. In order to avoid this dynamic, the foremost and the most important thing that everyone as a team needs to do is to ensure there is a free flow of communication. The communication needs to be transparent and it needs to be fair, which means to say that a fair and transparent communication cannot really exist till the time everyone in the team respects other people. So what that really means is that because different people have obviously different opinions, and in order to understand where someone is coming from or why someone feels passionately about a problem and why that problem needs to be solved, is because they come with their own set of beliefs. And the least as a team member you can do is learn to be able to listen to everyone with as much as an open mind as you would want them to listen to your problems when you come to them and tell them about the problems you would like to solve. Okay, now if you could just take me to the next slide for a minute. An example which I found to demonstrate the same thing is a French author, Colette. She basically says, so in a quote she writes that put down everything that comes into your head and write. Who can judge this and judge the stuff's worth without pity and destroy most of it. But at the same time, there's also a quote where she has said that a woman who thinks she is intelligent demands the same rights as men. An intelligent woman gives up, right? So while some might agree with the second quote, I don't agree with the second quote. So while she said something as beautiful as the first quote, she can also at times say something like the second quote, right? And in a group or in a team, everyone will say things which probably don't sit well with your belief system, and that's something that you need to cope with and deal with in a very healthy and positive manner in order to ensure that the entire process of ideation or this entire process of problem solving actually leads to a positive end, or really does what it was really supposed to in a way. Now, it is essential to move out of your comfort zone also and embrace and appreciate the ideas of your peers and try to understand from their perspective as to why would they feel that, right? The process of ideation single-handedly determines and defines your end goal. Essentially, what is the app that you're really going to end up making, or how are you going to really solve this problem? So along with ensuring cohesion and belonging, which the process builds within a team, it also ends up defining and giving the entire journey a sort of a defined meaning as to, okay, yes, this is what we're going to do. Okay, yeah. And from my own personal experience and from my own journey, I've seen that after every ideation process or after every brainstorming session where things probably would get really heated and would be really, really tough, after that the way you connect with your peers is also different, because when you see each other in a state of vulnerability to an extent, you're able to understand where the other person's coming from a lot more better. So if anything, the entire process of coming up with an idea, solving your problem, figuring out what problem you're going to solve, it should be something that you give your most time to, and it should be something that you smoothly let flow irrespective of how much ever time it's asking. So I think don't be scared, and every idea is possible, because it's the weirdest ideas which end up clicking at the last moments. And that's why you should also note all ideas down. Always keep noting down whatever you think of whenever you think of, because you don't know it's a jigsaw puzzle. It can just click anytime. So note everything down, and just whatever I've said. That's all. Thank you.
Hey, hello everyone. It's very nice to meet you today. My name's Nidhi Nair. I'm 20 years old. I'm currently an undergrad student at the University of Toronto in Canada. I'm from India. I completed Technovation in the year 2016 in the middle school category, and my team qualified for the finals. We actually won the People's Choice Award across all categories and came runners-up in our own category, so that was nice. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about some strategies and some steps you can use during the actual brainstorming for the problem process. And I hope that helps you as you set about on your journey. So to start off with brainstorming for a problem, that's an interesting statement in itself, right? Because, and it's instinct to first think of a solution. But what's really important at this point is to keep in mind that you need to pick a problem that's solid enough such that you're able to convince at the least your team and more broadly the community that, okay, this solution can actually solve this problem. And to do that, you need to have a good understanding, okay, this is what I'm trying to fix. So the first step to do that would be to come up with a long list of potential problems you could work on. And this is where a lot of the teamwork aspect comes in, because it really helps if you delegate. So let's say you have 4 people in your team, then you could assign something like each person comes up with about 4 to 5 ideas. So when you put that together, you end up with almost 15 to 20 ideas, which is a good lengthy list. At this point, you want to make sure you take everything down and let's not
see any son.
Sorry? Oh, okay. No worries. Don't cut anything from the list yet, because oftentimes when you come back, you might get a fresh perspective on what you're doing. And this is the initial brainstorming step. Next slide, please. Thank you. Then you come up with specifications or parameters that you use to actually judge the ideas. And I put up some examples on the slide. For example, can I think of more than one way to solve this problem? Because as you develop the app, you might realize that, okay, you know what I'm doing, I don't think it works out so well. Maybe we should try to alter it a little bit. So you should be able to have that flexibility. And another parameter would be, can I actually develop my app and all the other required deliverables in the time that I have, which I think at this point is about 4 odd months. So these are some examples, but what these help to do is to actually narrow down that list and find the actual viable problems as it goes that you and your team can work on and come up with an amazing solution for in the upcoming weeks. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is the third step, the shortlisting one. And this is the one where you actually narrow down the very extensive list you came up with in the first bit. And at the end of this stage, you should be aiming to have about 5 to 10 ideas. And the scale for this goes about, you should have about twice as many ideas as you have members in the team. And you'll see why that works as we go to the final step in a minute. So at this point, this is when you really start to crack down and, okay, my idea should fulfill these parameters. And you sort of begin thinking of solutions as well, right? Because if you have a problem, then you start thinking, okay, I think this is how we could solve it. Maybe our app could do this, our app could do that. And then it ties in nicely to the actual solution brainstorming and beginning to develop your app, your business plan, and that kind of thing. Next slide, please. Finally, this is the nicest part, and it is quite relieving also because, speaking from experience, my team and I took almost 2 months to finalize our problem. So, yeah, I can see some of the stunned faces at that. But that's because we used a very, very extensive process. And in hindsight, I can look at, okay, maybe this wasn't super required, or maybe we could have done this better, which is why I'm hoping all the alumni speaking today are able to help this year's participants at least a little bit. But the final step is when, this goes back to something one of the previous alumni said as well, each person take up ownership of 1 to 2 ideas proportionally to the number of people you have in your team and the number of ideas you have in your final shortlist, and come up with a list of pros and cons and present them to your team. This is good for 2 reasons. One is it helps you exercise those presentation skills, and you'll be doing some research into the actual problem and potential solutions already. So you would have a tentative direction of where you can take this. And the second reason why it's helpful is, so this way not the whole team is working on all 5 or 7 ideas, and you get a more detailed understanding of each idea that's on your list. I use idea and problem interchangeably. I hope that's not too confusing though. So in this step, that's where communication really becomes important, because you're trying to put across why this idea is or isn't a good way to move forward. And that's why I've included the word healthy team discussion, right? And one thing to aim for would be a unanimous decision, primarily because if you have the conviction that, okay, this is a really good idea, this is a good plan, I think we can come up with something great out of this, then you're going to put in your 110% and you'll be able to come up with something awesome for the submission deadlines. But if you're sort of on the fence, like, okay, you know what, I think this isn't great, but everyone else likes it, so I'm going to go with it, then barring the emotional aspects of it, you'd also be sort of on the fence of how to go about it, the technical aspects even. So that's why it's important to actually have that discussion and explain your perspective, as well as being open to your teammates' perspectives. Next slide, please. Thank you. So those 4 steps were just some suggestions that you could use along the way. They're not hard and fast parameters that you need to follow, but they just help you organize the process a little bit. But on this slide, I just have some points that are universally helpful. So the first one is to be open to other ideas, right? This is the Technovation is done as part of the team. So while everyone would love to their ideas selected, you also need to be open to your teammates' ideas, to the recommendations of the people who are around you. And ultimately, you might find something really helpful that comes out of there, that, okay, maybe I can I didn't think of it that way. What if we do it a little differently? And that often takes you in your direction. The next bit is to keep communicating with your team and your mentor, right? I'm sure the part of communicating with your team that is something that's going to take some time to develop, which is why, again, it's important to maintain that connect from the beginning itself. So if you have a conflict at any point, or even if you just want to say good job, well done guys, they're able to do that without going through a whole period of, okay, should I not, that kind of thing. And communicating with your mentors also important, because they're the people who guide you along the process, keep track of your deliverables, and ultimately might even be able to help you with some of the more technical aspects. So it's always a good idea to keep them up to date, which sort of ties into the next point, which is to use all the resources you have available. As part of the Technovation program itself, there's a list of things that are very helpful along the process. For example, this live class that we're all in right now, that's one example. But another often underutilized resource is your parents and your families around you. And there's a few ways that they can be very helpful and a source of information. For one, they are an objective perspective on whatever you're working on. And secondly, your ultimate solution, they might end up being a consumer of it. For example, my team and our app was one that collected the remainder change from financial transactions, and we collected that money and pooled it to help fund the education of the underprivileged. So what we did was we asked our parents, we asked our families, okay, would you use this app? And if it was in so and so format, would this make it a little more user friendly? So that actually helped us run some trials on how to optimize our actual app, or maybe change it on some technical features and that sort of thing. So that was nice. Finally, give and receive constructive feedback. It's fine if you have an opinion on another teammate's idea, right? Because ultimately, everyone in the team wants the same thing. They want to do something for their community, and they want to do it. They want to build an app for it. So at any point, if you think, okay, this could be done a little differently, then feel free. You should definitely suggest that. At the same time, you should be open to receiving that feedback as well. Only thing to keep in mind is that it should be constructive feedback, but I'm sure everyone here is good with that. And if not, there's definitely exercises online, or you can even ask your mentors, because they probably have a little more experience with that kind of thing, about some team building exercises where you can actually try out some of these things. And it makes the whole process a lot more fun, really. And the actual last bit is, as cliche as it sounds, there are no bad ideas. I'm sure everyone at some point might think, okay, you know what? I don't think this idea is very good. I don't think I want to include it. I think you definitely should, though, because you never know. That might be the one that ultimately ends up being the one that you go ahead with, right? Or maybe your teammate or mentor might have some suggestions that, okay, what if you do it a little differently? And then that might be really great. So this is an amazing process. You're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to learn a lot of things, a lot of technical and soft skills. And the important thing is to just be open to it all and have a great time. That was me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, alumna. It is always awesome to hear your perspectives. Let's talk about identifying problems. So here you can see what kind of problems girls decided to tackle last season. For more examples, you can also visit our app gallery, which will be linked in the chat. I really love this GIF. It shows the percentage of the problem breakdown by geographical region. So it does the whole world, but then it also does all the continents and other areas. And there's the app gallery link in the chat. Thank you, Emily. Okay, let's talk about types of problems. There are many different types of problems that the Technovation Girls participants have set out to solve. The United Nations defines 17 different types of problems or solutions, depending on the way you want to think about it, through the Sustainable Development Goals. These Sustainable Development Goals were created with the goal to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. In other words, if we can work together as a species to improve in these 17 areas, then the world will be a better place. At Technovation, we grouped these 17 goals into about 5 categories. We'll also put a link into the chat where you can see these goals. So a lot of students decide to identify their problem based on one of these categories. Ooh. All right, tips for the ideation process. So let's start thinking about issues, and here are some fun tips for ideation. Ideation is just a fancy word for brainstorming. Brainstorming is a group activity that is meant to generate a large number of ideas. As you brainstorm, you might not feel totally confident in every idea, and that's totally normal. So let's move into a brainstorming activity that, once again, is led by one of our alumni.
Hi, it's me again. Okay, so this is an activity that I hope it's fun and also helpful. So this is something that I actually use in one of my university teams in an engineering design course. So what this activity is based on is you're provided a scenario, and for that scenario, you have to come up with some potential problems that could come up. So to give an example, if my scenario is that I have some snacks on a high shelf and I've trained my pet monkey to hand off the snacks from the high shelf. What are some problems I could see coming up from that? So maybe one problem is one day the monkey runs away with all my snacks and I have no snacks left. Or if there is an earthquake, then the house could come down over my head. Or if there's some bananas in the kitchen, the monkey could be distracted and it wouldn't listen to me. Right? So those were just some very fantastical examples, but I'm going to put in some more realistic scenarios. And that should give you an idea of how to look for problems in real life situations. So I love it if everyone could just put their thoughts in the chat. And the first scenario is, give me 1 second, please. Yes, that I want to go with my group of friends to look at stars. So do you need me to put that? Tell you, why don't I put that in the chat so you can refer to it quickly? That's a good one. It may be rainy or cold. I'm going to give everyone about a minute to put all their answers in the chat. A good one. It's daytime and you can't see the stars. May not have transport. That's great. And again, these problems don't have to be realistic. Of course, I can repeat it. The scenario is that I want to go look at stars with a group of my friends. So what are some of the problems that could come up? These don't have to be realistic problems, but this is more about deriving problems from any scenario, right? Maybe bright outside, there could be fog and clouds. You need a flashlight to see. That's a good one. Gonna give it about 10 more seconds and then move on to the next one. There may be no stars. That's nice. And there's so few of those. I think that's a real concern given all the light pollution. So that's a good answer, really. Mosquitoes. May lose your map. That's a fun one. But yes, I hope this gives everyone an idea that even from simple situations like these, you can always find a problem, as pessimistic as that sounds. So I'm going to move on to the next scenario now. But if you want to keep putting in your answers, please go for it. So the next scenario is that I want to order food online because I'm very hungry. So what are some of the problems that could come up there? And again, it doesn't have to be that exact scenario. You can go a little ahead or after, for example. That's what I meant. The phone isn't charged. So those kinds of things that also work. It's about the situational awareness of that scenario. Pollution, accident, wow. No stable internet, credit card expired. I'll be honest, these are some situations I have encountered in real life. So that takes me back to some extent. Restaurant will pick up their phone. That's a good one, actually. That's a clever one. Phone delivery bike may get lost. That the last one right there, that's a valid concern. I can't imagine what the dish looks like, but it has a bad description. That's fair. Do we have time for one more scenario? Or okay, so I think we can do one more. And this one's a little comic, really. A chicken wants to cross the road. to repeat. Oh, I think we have a hand raised. Did you have a question or? Okay, I'm going to move on with the third scenario. And if you have a question, why don't you put it in the chat so Kiki and Karen can get to that. All right. So the third scenario, to repeat is that a chicken wants to cross the road. A chicken, as in a hen, wants to cross the road. Car might crash into it. It's not that fast. That's a good one because the signal might time out. No spot for chicken on the other side. That's a high fence. That's a good one. I think one problem might be if it's a highway, then it might be a casualty, but that's pretty dark. Doesn't understand traffic rules. That's an actual problem. The road could be busy. So I hope everyone had a good time with the activity, of course, and I hope you were able to see where I was going with this. In that, in any situation that you pick up, if let's say you want to tackle something about pollution, right? That's a very broad issue. Then there's many ways to look at it. We picked up something like a chicken crossing the road and look at the variety of solutions, variety of problems rather that we came up with here. So that just goes to show that if you have something that's more broad and blanketed, like a pollution or traffic or that garbage isn't disposed properly, there's definitely a lot you could come up with that as well. So I hope this exercise was helpful. Why are you talking about chickens? Okay. But I hope you guys have a great time in the program. And I'm going to hand it back to Kiki.
Yes, thank you so much. That was such a fun activity. That is a great example of how brainstorming doesn't always have to be serious. It can just be something to get all those thoughts going. Oh, okay. So we're going to talk about another ideation or brainstorming tool called ChatGPT. Some of you are probably already familiar with this, and it's a revolutionary artificial intelligence, or AI for short, agent that you can actually chat with. So it's basically a computer that has been trained to think. So you can actually talk to it and have a conversation. This could help your team generate some ideas for your Technovation project. So we are actually going to do a live demonstration with ChatGPT just so that you all can get a sense of how it works. So we're going to ask it one of the same questions that we were just thinking about. What issues might I encounter when ordering food online? And let's see, it's thinking. All right. And you can see it's typing automatically. So the computer is telling me these things. So some of the issues might be difficulty navigating the website, limited menu options, long wait time, incorrect or missing items in the order, wrong prices, can't reach customer service, the quality of the food is bad, the payment might not go through, can't cancel it, can't track it, issues with the delivery driver's behavior, oy vey, or food could arrive cold. So it came up with a lot of the same ideas that we came up with, but it also came up with some other ones. Isn't that interesting? I see in the chat when I tried to use ChatGPT, it said the server was full. Yes, this is an issue that you will run into, but just keep trying and reloading the page at different times in the day and you should be able to access it. Let's ask it something else. Let's try to think of different issues. So the community I live in is in Tampa, Florida. And let's see if it can try to tell me what community issues are there. Oh, I can't spell today. In Tampa, Florida. Let's see what it says. All right. Poverty. Yep. Education. Crime. So as you can see, this is a tool that can help you think outside of the box and think of some different ideas. The link is in the chat. I definitely recommend using this as a resource with your team when you're just trying to do some brainstorming or ideation and figuring out what kind of issues or even what kind of solutions. You could ask it, what are some solutions to your issue? So if your issue is climate change, what are some solutions to climate change? And it could just give you some ideas of issues that you might want to tackle. All right, so now it's time to put all this together. So problems and ideas, and the passion for the idea, and user research. You might be asking what user research means, and this is just asking your community what their experience is with the issue that you're trying to solve. So as some of our alumni said, asking your friends what they think, asking your parents what they think, asking your teachers what they think about the issue that you're trying to solve, and that all equals out to a great problem for us to focus on. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Karen for our coding section.
Hey, thank you, Kiki, and thanks to all our alumni for those great presentations. So I'm going to cover, and we're trying to cover a lot in this first live class. So once you get your problem, of course, the big thing for everyone is to actually start building their project. So we wanted to cover the coding options here as well. So for Technovation, your main platforms that you can code with, and the ones that are covered in our curriculum, are MIT App Inventor and Thunkable, which are both block-based programming languages. And in the past, we've also had teams submit projects built with Java or Swift, which are text-based languages. Since we opened up the program to AI projects, artificial intelligence projects, we have allowed teams to submit projects using other languages and platforms. So if that's a question, you are allowed to program your mobile app in any language. However, in the curriculum, we focused on those top two. Okay, next one. So these are, again, in the past, historically, the main languages or platforms that teams have used for their Technovation project. So this table just gives you a little breakdown of what each one, what are the features of each one. So App Inventor and Thunkable can work both on Android and iOS phones, whereas Java works with Android only, and then Swift works with iOS only. So thinking about, the range of what you want your mobile app to be, you might think about which platform is right for you. App Inventor and Thunkable, I'm going to say, are pretty comparable. The main thing about Thunkable is probably has a slightly better or prettier user interface. App Inventor gives you the option of it's more open source, and there are some limits to the Thunkable project, to the Thunkable when you sign up for the free account. There's some limits to it. And I would say across the board online, there are all sorts of tutorials that you can follow. Okay, next slide. Okay, we've also broken down specifically App Inventor and Thunkable. And my thinking is that you have to think about the kind of app that you want to build. And based on the features of those two is choose which one you want to use. So for instance, App Inventor, like I said, has more of a basic interface. However, there are certain features that it's good at. It has really great extensions for artificial intelligence. Its maps are really good. It does have the ability to store things both locally on the phone and in the cloud. Thunkable, I'd say, if you're looking for cloud storage and being able to have things stored and shared amongst users of your app, that's probably the one to go with. So we'll share these slides after, and you should really kind of look at the different features of each as to which might be the best one for you. Next slide. Okay, so today we're actually going to do some breakout rooms, and we're going to have 3 different options here. So App Inventor, we have 2 of our alumni that are going to run these breakout rooms. Beamlac is going to run an App Inventor breakout room. We've got Marina, who's going to run a Thunkable breakout room. And then I'm going to also run a breakout room for anyone that's interested in potentially using artificial intelligence in their project. And we're going to do a little activity just running through training an AI model. So what we're going to do is we're going to please mute if you're unmuted. Please mute yourself. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to break out into the rooms, and you're going to choose one of the three options. So I think we're going to leave App Inventor in the main room, and then we're going to have a breakout room for Thunkable with Marina and AI with myself. We're going to do this for the next 45 minutes. I know we're running a little late, but if just so you know, when we come back, we will have a Q&A session from both mentors and students at the end. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, so we can possibly set up those breakout rooms.
Yeah, the breakout rooms are started. Can you see them on your screen, Karen, to join?
Oh, I get it now. Yep.
Okay, could you talk through how to join one? I'm not sure what it looks like on your side.
Okay. So if you go down to the bottom of your screen, there should be a button that says breakout rooms. And then there are two options, Thunkable and AI. So again, if you want to do some App Inventor with Beamlock, stay in the main room. If you would like to do some Thunkable with Marina, join the Thunkable room. And if you're interested in learning how to train an AI model for an AI project, you can join me in the AI room. Okay, so just click on the little blue button to join. And again, this will be about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll return to the main room for some Q&A.
I can't see the blue button.
Oh, you can't?
Neither can I.
So what do you see? Do you see Thunkable and AI as an option?
Nope.
No button.
No option at all. I'm not seeing any option.
I'll close the rooms and try again, and we'll see if that.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's try this. Open all rooms. Do you see that? No?
Or should we just refresh our page? Something like that.
No, I don't think you need to.
No, it doesn't appear any button with rooms.
Okay, you can slowly put in the chat which room you want to go to, and it'll take a minute, but I can start assigning you. Okay.
Oh.
Wow, this will take a while.
This might be tough.
Yeah, that is more than I thought it was going to be. I'm not sure why these aren't working. Let's see if I can just automatically assign you all to rooms, and then you can probably change from one room to another if it's not the room that you want to be in. Let's see. Oh, here, hold on, Karen. I got to change the setting.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Maybe.
Can you see the blue button now? No.
No.
Yes, I'm getting yeses in the chat. Okay. Woohoo!
Oh, good. Okay.
I still don't see one.
Okay, let's give a minute for everyone that does see it to move into your room, and then anyone that's left, we can move into the room manually.
Okay, no problem.
An App Inventor will just stay in this room.
Okay, I've seen the options. Thunkable and AI, I think.
Yep. App Inventor will stay in this room. And then App Inventor will stay in this room. So sorry. And then Thunkable and AI are options. So if you'd like to go to Thunkable or AI, you can put that in the chat and I can move you there. AI means artificial intelligence. So that's similar to the Chat GPT example that we led earlier. Thank you, Sonia, for your help. Which window? I'm not sure what that question means. If you'd like to be in App Inventor, then you're in the right spot. If you'd like to be in Thunkable or the Artificial Intelligence AI room, please put that in the chat and I can move you there. Okay, it seems like, okay, almost everyone here would like to be here. So that's good. So I will turn it over to our App Inventor leader.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Bablak, and I'm really glad for you guys to join me in the App Inventor section. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm a student ambassador from Ethiopia, and I'm also an alumni for Technovation. So I did my first project in App Inventor, and it was definitely my first introduction to programming. And it sets a really good foundation for any other work that you might want to do in the future. So yeah, let's get started. One minute, I'm trying to screen share.
Let me stop my screen share. And I made you a co-host, and then you should be able to do yours.
Okay, thank you. All right, so one thing about MIT App Inventor will be that the apps that you make are going to have a hard time running on an iOS device. They can only run on Apple devices, on Android devices. But you can still use the emulator on an iOS device in order to see how your app would actually function. You just can't upload it onto your device. But we'll look at that later. So in today's lesson, we're going to look at the user interface, and then going to look at programming. Lastly, we will look at other key functions that you can do through App Inventor in order to get your app running and going, which are databases and also how you can test the app you create. Before that, however, let's just cover two different types of programming. So there's, as Ms. Karen had said previously, there's the text-based programming languages like Java and Python, where you actually have to write code in order for your program to run, and they have their own specific syntax. However, block-based programming are essentially drag and drop, like MIT App Inventor, Scratch, Thunkable, and they make it much easier for beginners to start out with, but they still give you the same foundations that these programming languages do in terms of computational thinking. There's also an unlimited, almost an unlimited amount of things that you can specifically do with App Inventor. So don't be limited by the fact that it's block-based. You can still do really cool things. Okay. So let's move on to the user interface, which is a little bit of jargon here. But the user interface is just essentially the parts of your app that your user can see or interact with. And it's otherwise known as the front end. So whenever you open an app, whether it be Instagram, whatever you see is your user interface. And on App Inventor, you'll have the power to design that yourself. So let's look at YouTube as an example, which is something that the majority of us are familiar with. So on YouTube here, this is a computer view, but it's almost the same thing when it comes to a phone application. That just makes it easier to see the features. So up top, the first thing that you'll see is the first thing that you'll see is the search bar. So in the search bar, it's part of the UI because the user can interact with it. That is where the user can put in whatever text they want or what they want searched. It receives input from the user. And then you have thumbnails, and that's an example of an image that you're showing on your screen. Another like lingo that you need for App Inventor is the word screen. So for example, on YouTube, from the chat, what types of screens do you usually see? So this is the home page. What other screens are there? Which parts do you want me to repeat, Alicia?
I think the question is about the breakout rooms. So this is MIT App Inventor, and you're doing an awesome job. And then the other one is Thunkable, which is pretty similar. And then the third one is AI, which is the artificial intelligence. If you're not sure which one you want to do, I would just stay in this room because it's pretty good.
All right. So from chat, how many views of YouTube do you know? So this is the home screen. This is the first thing that you're going to see when you go onto the app. But it's not the only functionality that YouTube has. So one thing that I can think of right now is the trending page. And then there's also the creators page. What other pages can you think of on YouTube? Nice, the history, exactly. Anything else? Great. So what we look at these are exactly. So these are just different views within the same app. So it makes sure that YouTube doesn't only have one functionality, but it puts a lot of the functionalities in one specific app. And we call each of these individual, the library, watch later, settings, all of these we call screens when it comes to App Inventor. So for example, on your app, when you jump into the homepage, you're going to have, let's say, one main screen. And then let's say you want, again, a settings part. You're going to create another screen. That's how you add different functionalities to your app. The one thing with App Inventor, though, is there is a 10 screen limit on App Inventor. So when you work on your app, make sure to keep that in mind. So you might have to limit a little bit of functionality, but 10 screens is more than enough to explore as much as you'd like. And then one thing that we see here is we can see, for example, the X. These are examples of buttons. So in conclusion, your user interface shows the content that you want to show to the user. For example, the thumbnails is what the app is showing, but it also gives users the space to just add in their own inputs as well. Okay, so all right. One thing that I want us to do is, oh, sorry, it's messing up a little bit. One thing that I want us to do today is, as we go through App Inventor, I'm definitely a person that learns by doing. So instead of just talking about the theory, I want us to go onto the website and through an example, see that everything that we're talking about here has some sort of practical application. So we're going to create an app called Speak Up, just a really small app. And it's going to be an app that dictates text that is written by the user. So Technovation is always about, helping out in your community. So in chat, can anybody think of what problem this very simple app can actually help solve? Exactly. Could definitely help mute people. Writing notes. One thing that I personally would use it for is I am an auditory listener, so auditory learner. So I could definitely type up my notes and have it read back to me, especially at a time where I'm on a rush. That's really good. Another one is it could also help deaf people catch a person's attention in a loud room. So there are a lot of practical applications to any app that you might create, which is also why I find Technovation really cool. So based off of that, let's go on to App Inventor and see exactly how to do it. Okay, so I will share my screen. All right. So this is the App Inventor homepage. For anybody wanting to follow along, I have posted the link in chat. So you're just going to press that Create Apps button on the leftmost corner. So I already have an account, so it's not going to ask me to create one. But if you don't, it's just a matter of putting in your email and you're good to go. So each app that you create is called a project. Let me just get out of here. And let's say start project. So that was Speak Up. So that's how you create an app. Really straightforward. Okay, so this is your general. Can everybody see my screen, by the way? Sorry, forgot to check. Awesome. Don't be afraid to type in chat if you have any questions, by the way. This is like a very open learning environment. Okay, so on your left, you have your palette. And it's basically where you're going to have all of your components to add onto your screen. So over here, the section you see in the middle will show you a preview of what your app will look like. You can't actually use it until you connect it to another device, which I'll show you how to do later. But this will show you the basic UI. It will give you a general idea of what your app is going to look like. So over here, you have your palette. Over here, you have your screens, and this is where you can add multiple screens, the screens that we talked about earlier. So for the app that we wanted to create, which was basically an app where you can put in text and have something read it back to you, what do you think you need? Type in chat. Like, what are some components that you think you would need? One thing that I would say, for example, is you need a place for users to type in their response. So that would be the text box down here. Exactly, keypad. And the text box itself will bring that up. What's another thing? What do you press when you want your order to go in or when you want something to actually be done? There has to be a button, right? So that's also something we're going to add. So in App Inventor, you can edit all of the properties of each of your objects that you put in on the right-hand side of the screen. As you can see here, it's properties. So for example, let's say I want to make the background color of my screen cyan or, okay, green, because it's a more friendly color. That this is going to be the area where you edit everything that you would want. On this side, let's pull in our text box, which is where our user is going to put in their text. And then they also need to be able to press a button to say, hey, this is what I want to be read out loud. So these are what we call our visible components, as you can see here. Does this look right to any of y'all? I think it's a little bit slanted to the left. So we're going to go to screen one up here. And we can align it center and also align it vertically center. This is going to be the area where you can change up all of the properties for your visible components. So for the button as well, we can come here and change the text within the button. No, very sadly, MIT only allows one user, like MIT App Inventor only allows one user to edit at once. What I personally did for my project during Technovation was I created an email specifically for our Technovation team so that anybody can log in and access it whenever they'd like. Neither Thunkable or MIT App Inventor allow multiple users to edit a project at once, but that's definitely a way to work on the project together by just sharing an account between yourselves. No problem. Okay, so we can definitely change the text of the button down here. And let's say, speak up. That could be our text. All right. So let's just look through the components actually available for you guys to use. So you have your button here, which we just used. And then there's also, for example, password text box, list view. I'd definitely say go through all of these. And this is the documentation. I will post it in chat right now. Yes, you can import and export projects, but App Inventor has its own specific file type. So make sure your device is compatible with that. Okay, so I'm sending you guys a link here that will take you to the documentation for the components. You can't really remember what everything does, so I definitely say take a look at this before getting started because it will equip you with the knowledge of all you can do. One thing that I wanted to look at is layout. So in order to make your screen look nice, there are all of these different layouts that you can add. For example, if you can see here, it's really difficult to put them side to side. So when you want to make them side to side, for example, what you can do is you add an horizontal arrangement, and then you can put both of them in side to side. So the arrangements here in the layout section will allow you to make your app look exactly how you want it to. Moving on to media, this is where, for example, if you wanted to add an image, you would just put in, oh, it's supposed to be here. Okay, you just drag in, for example, if you wanted to be able to pick an image, you just pick that and then it would automatically bring up your gallery for you and etc. But we don't really need it for this app, so we can go here and delete it. One thing that I want to talk about that our app needs in this case will be an invisible component. So invisible components. So in this design section, you're not only putting in your user interface, you're also putting in all of the components that you think your app will need. So over here, there was, for example, image picker. That's something that a user will use directly. But another thing to look at is we need the text to speech converter because we're putting in text and we want it to be said out loud as speech. Text to speech is not something that your user can see, which is why we call it invisible components, but it's also something that your app really needs. So you're just going to drag it onto your app, and down below, you can see that in the non-visible components, it's there. So even though your user can't see it, we can later access all of its uses. So I definitely say explore all of these objects that you can add. For example, you can even put in a map for your application. The things that you can do are almost limitless. So definitely dream big when you start working on your app and explore all that you can possibly add. So there are charts, sensors. This is actually something really cool. You can even like add a gyroscope and everything to check if your phone or the user's phone is being tilted and everything like that. So definitely check it out. But moving back to I'm really sorry to cut this short. It's because we don't have too much time. But one thing we're going to look at next is the programming aspect of things, because the user interface is always backed with the instructions that you yourself give the computer. So one thing to look at here is algorithms, which is always going to be the basis of your application. So I found this really funny. An algorithm is the words used by programmers when they do not want to explain what they did, which is kind of true if you noticed in movies, but the meaning is actually much more relevant than that. Okay, so An algorithm is very simple, even though it might sound a little bit complex. It's basically just a set of instructions that you give a computer for solving a problem or accomplishing a specific task. So computer can't think for itself. It only operates on the instructions that you give it. So it's the most fundamental aspect of coding. An example of an algorithm that we can apply to our own life is just the recipe for any baked good. So you like measure out and mix ingredients, grease a pan, bake for 30 minutes. These are the specific instructions that your program or your app will always go through. So just in conclusion, a computer program is essentially an algorithm itself that tells the computer what specific steps to execute in what order in order to carry out a specific task. And this will be up to you to design in App Inventor. So the basis of an algorithm are if conditions. And if conditions basically test whether a given condition is true or not. So for example, in the context of our own app, when we press the speak up button, we want it to speak up if and only if there's text that the user has inputted. So it will be if that specific text box has text, then say it out loud. If not, for example, let's say if we wanted to expand our app further, we'd tell our user else, which will be like your second condition, else tell the user that they have not inputted any text. So your if conditions are fundamentally just the most basic part of your application, and you're definitely going to have to think of these things when you're creating your app. So let's go back to our own app and see how we can actually implement this. So coming back here, this is our designer section, but we want to go to blocks, which is on the left and the rightmost corner here. And this is where you're going to do all of your programming or coding and logic. So these are on the left. You also have built-in blocks here. And I will put in the documentation for that in the chat. Please look through the documentation. It definitely has saved me more times than I can count. So let's just look through some of these. So here you have the if statements that we talked about earlier. They're definitely a lot, just explore, but we'll see the basic functionalities today. We have logic here, text. We'll go through these as we go along. But now what we want to do is say, we want the text to speech to work if there's text within our text box. So one thing that we can do to make it easier, going back here, we can make our text box, we can change the name of our text box so that we can easily remember. So when your program gets really big, you're going to have so many components, you're going to find it difficult to track which is which. So let's rename and say user input text. Let's make it that so we know exactly what its function is. And the button here will be, let's rename that to speak. So coming back to our blocks, we can say text to speech. So whenever you want a specific function relating to each of our components that we put in earlier, you're going to come and press each of that on the side. So for example, we want to say text to speech, right? But we want the text to speech to activate after we press the button. That's why the button is there. So we're going to go to speak and say when speak dot click. Over here, I'll give you the name of your component, and dot click, anything after the dot is the action that the user takes towards that button, that component. So when speak dot click, what do we want to happen there? Can anybody type out the algorithm in chat? Just like in basic English, what do we want to happen? I'll get the ball rolling here. For example, so when a user clicks the speak button, we want the program to check Access, exactly. Access user input text or read the text, exactly. And then we wanted to check whether there even actually is text before we call the text to speech in order to make it say what we want it to say. So I know that sounded really complex coming out, but it's very straightforward. We're going to go to so when speak.click, which is when the button is clicked. First, we want to check. So we're going to go to here. If. So our if here is going to check whether there's text within this user input text. So we're going to go here and say, so this is a logic statement. So it's going to check if a condition that we put on the left is equal to a condition that we put on the right. If we want to say not equal to, it's just a matter of pressing that arrow and choosing in between. So yeah, let's say I wanted to check if it's not equal to, but what we're going to check here is we're going to go to user input.text. So as we said, we want to access the text that is in this inputs section. So we're going to go here and say, where is it? User inputs text. So remember when I said the dots always tell you what you're accessing. So it's user input text dot text. For example, we might want to have accessed the background color or the height, but specifically we want to access the text of the component. So if the text, and then we're going to come to text here, is not equal to, that's an empty text box. So on text, you have empty, you have join. Definitely look at the documentation. We just don't have enough time to cover this, but we just put out a text field here. So if user input.text is not equal to blank, then we want to access the text to speech. We want to call it to speak. And what's the message that we want to give? The user input text dot text. That's what we wanted to say. So this is our very simple algorithm for the app that we decided to create earlier. Sadly, we cannot test this in a way that all of us can see, but the basic logic here is when an event occurs, which is when the button is clicked, then we check whether the text is not equal to blank. And if it's not equal to blank, then we're going to call the text to speech and have it say the user input, the text from user input.text. Okay, any questions so far? If everything is clear, type yes in chat, please. All right, that's great. Okay, so these are our basic functionalities for App Inventor, but there are also a few more concepts that I want to cover before this session ends. So moving back to our presentation, there are two other components that will be immensely helpful for you as you're creating your app, even though we're not going to see them in practice today. The first one, and a very fundamental concept in all of programming, whether you're doing Java, Python, or App Inventor, are variables. So a computer, as we said, it's also has memory, right? But the data values that we send, if we want to save them, we save them in variables. So variables are essentially a container that contains the data that we give them in order to store them, and they can also be changed over time. So these are certain blocks that exist in App Inventor, and this picture is from the documentation. So in order to, when you first start your app and you want to create a variable, you must first initialize it. After that, in order to get the value of within a variable, you just have to use the get block. And then if you want to change the value of a variable, you just have to use the set to block. We can actually see this in action. here, but it's just not going to have much use. So we can say variables, we want to initialize, let's say, text to user input dot text. It's not going to have much of a purpose, just to show you how it would work. And let's say we want to change this every time that the user puts in a new text. All we're going to have to do is go to set, and then you come here, because it's every time a user puts in a new text, you set global text to user input dot text. So this doesn't have much use, but this is just the basics of how you would use a variable. One last thing that I want to look at, since we only have 5 minutes left, is so a list is something very useful within your apps. Let's say, for example, you're creating a game that has multiple rounds, and you want to save the score that a user gets for each and every single round. So a variable can only, unless you have multiple variables that you create for each and every single round, it can only store one piece of data at a time. So instead of doing that, you can create a list by saying create empty list. And as new input is being given, you can keep appending and adding items to the list. So one score after the other, to get a list of all of the scores. The uses of lists are a lot, so definitely take a look at it. It was just something I just wanted to mention, so that you don't look over it in the future, just to point it out. Okay, one last thing that I wanted to do before we finish was, when we come to App Inventor, there are certain functionalities that are going to be really useful. For example, coming back to Designer, one thing that you guys should definitely consider using is a database. So even though a variable can store values, it can only store values when in one session of the app. So let's say you go into YouTube and you swipe up. If you were using variables, you would have lost all of your data once you swiped up, and you'd have to re-input it every time you join the app. A database is a collection of files kept in a collection of data kept in tables, and it's permanent unless you delete it. So definitely take a look at that as you're creating the app. One thing is, so the middle part here will only show you a preview of what your app will look like. If you actually want to test it as you work on it, see if the code itself in the background is working, as well as see how it's actually going to look on a mobile device, you're going to use the function here, which is at the very top, the connect function. So you have an AI companion, which you can download for both iOS and Android devices. And on the AI companion, you just have to be connected, your computer and your AI companion, on the same Wi-Fi or network. And you can see a live and dynamic mirror of your work onto the device. Will we have to build an application? For Technovation, yes, you'll have to build an application. Or you can also submit an AI. Project. Okay, so another thing that you can possibly do is use an emulator, which is, if you don't have an external mobile device, you can have the app shown onto your computer itself on the side. It's just not as seamless as it would be with an AI companion. And if you don't have Wi-Fi, you can also use a USB to connect to your companion. All right, guys, I think that concludes our small class for today. Thank you for having me, and we'll hopefully see each other some other time. Oh, any questions? We have, I think, 45 seconds. Okay, my pleasure. All right, bye, guys.
Okay, I think, are we all back? We're all back, right? Okay, so thanks to Beamlock and Marina for presenting on App Embedded Unthinkable. I know that was a very short window. I found it was pretty short. I was trying to run through quickly in the AI room. So hopefully you learned a little bit about the platform that you may be using for your Technovation project, enough to get started and get some tips from people who have good experience with those. But what now we'd like to do, I know we're at the end of our 90 minutes that we had scheduled originally, but so if you have not registered yet for Technovation Girls, please do so. And then hopefully we've given you some tips for ideation, so you can go ahead and start to do a little more research, maybe try out that Chat GPT to help you generate some ideas and to solidify the problem that you and your team might want to work on. Our next live class is going to be Saturday, February 11th, same time. And that one's going to be on writing a business plan. And also we'll be doing some coding. And for that one, the coding part will just be help. So at that point, we're hoping that you might have started your apps. And so you might want to, get some help from some alumni that would be able to help you. Right, business plan, if you're a junior team, your user adoption plan. All right, and so you can register for that. And then we have some questions that we'd like you to answer. Oh, and we even have a poll to answer those questions. So we'd like everyone to quickly answer those questions. Sorry about that. I thought I was unmuted, but I was muted. So thanks, everyone. So if you'd like to stay on for Q&A, we're going to actually do 2 rooms again. So I think we're going to leave the students in the main room. And then for mentors, I believe we've got Ray here from Technovation, from our volunteer engagement team. And she's going to be here to answer any mentor questions. So thank you all. We hope to see you at the next live class, which is February 11th. But stick around if you would like to get some questions answered by Technovation staff. Nice. Okay, so we have had people jump into the mentor breakout. So we've got, I assume, just students here. So Kiki and I are here. And also Marina and Beamlock, I think, are still here. So if you have any questions, either about coding or about ideation or anything about Technovation, feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask.
Karen, there's one question that I think you could answer in the chat. It says, can we do the prototype on paper?
So what type of prototype? I mean, there's the prototype for your mobile app, and that definitely could be done on paper. I don't know if you're talking about an AI prototype or a mobile app prototype.
So excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, I am Aditi from India. So me and my team have started a project. So we have taken up a topic last week and we have started. So we wanted to do the apps prototype for the screens. Like, is it compulsory to do it in paper or can we do it digitally also?
You can do it on paper or you can do it online. It doesn't matter because that's really to prepare yourself and then possibly to share with users. But either way, save it because this is useful. It's going to be useful when you submit your project. So you can either take a picture of your paper prototype or you can save your online prototype. And those would be one of the pictures you'd probably submit with your project. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
To answer the question, what to do if there are no mentors in my area for my team, there are two options. One, you could expand your search for mentors on the platform to include mentors from all over. Mentors and students don't need to be from the same country or area. Or you could also work without a mentor, which about half of our teams do.
Do you have any other questions, comments? Anyone want to share what problems they're thinking of? You all were very, very active during the brainstorming, but now we're not hearing anything. So you must not have any questions, which is great. And you're welcome for the lesson. Hopefully, okay, that's a good question on, is it possible to download the app I'll create in Thunkable and share it with people? So you won't be able to download a Thunkable project unless you get a pro account, which does cost money. And I think Marina covered it, that there are educational discounts, but still it will cost money. So if you're hoping to download it and share it, or even publish it to the Play Store or the App Store, there is a fee involved. So if you're hoping to be able to share with people without having to pay any money, App Inventor might be the way to go, because App Inventor has the ability to, you can download an APK, which then you can share with people and they can upload to their phones without paying anything. If you're going to publish to the Play Store, there's a $25 fee that Google requires that you pay. So you'd have to get a developer account. So that part would cost. But generally, if you want to share with people just by emailing them your project and having them upload it to their Android phone, you should be able to do that from App Inventor. Bye, everyone. Great to see you here.